Welcome back, everyone. The iPhone 6s Plus and the iPhone 7 Plus came out a few years ago, now probably like 5 or 6 years ago. But let's go and see how both of these iPhones hold up in 2022. Now, I probably wouldn't recommend buying the 6s Plus anymore, and even the 7 Plus is kind of old. I'd probably recommend going for like a 10, 11, 12. I'll leave those iPhones linked to the description. You can get them from there, help support the channel at the same time. Now, side by side, these iPhones are actually way more similar than not. You can see they still have 5.5-inch panels on the front. They both look pretty much the same. The main differences is pretty much like a better camera setup on the 7 Plus, at least on the front and the back on the 7 Plus. You have, I guess, maybe a better display. Not really. They're both the same exact thing nowadays. The only main difference on the front that you can probably not even tell over the camera is with the home button. The iPhone 7 Plus has like this vibration clicking motor. It's no longer a physical button. With the iPhone 6 Plus, it was like a button that actually clicked in. 7 Plus did not have that. So that was a pretty big difference, but that pretty much covers it up on the front. On the bottom, though, there's actually a huge difference here. The iPhone 6s Plus actually both have the lighting ports on the bottom, but the 6s Plus has this actual headphone jack, which is really cool. The 7 Plus was the first iPhone to remove that, so that was actually pretty crazy. We no longer had a headphone jack on the 7 Plus. Is it a big deal now? Not really. We're pretty much used to it, but it was one of those things that was kind of mind-boggling at that moment. In terms of thinness and thickness, pretty much the same thing. There's not really that big of a difference here. And on the back, you have aluminum backs on both. A dual camera setup on the 7 Plus. Really amazing thing. First iPhone to bring that dual camera setup. The 6s Plus had a single camera setup here. Neither one of them had wireless charging, which is probably a good thing. But neither of them. But the 6s Plus doesn't have any IP certification either. The 7 Plus actually did have certified, it was IP certified, which was really cool. So if you splash some water on this phone, it would be totally okay. But you can even tell that the build quality was quite a bit different. The 7 Plus was actually a pretty big visual change coming from the 6s Plus. So that's another really, really big thing to keep in mind. I think when it comes down to the build quality of both, the 7 Plus probably feels a little bit more premium, but they're both kind of the same thing now, to be honest. There really isn't that crazy big of a deal between these nowadays, but it is pretty crazy how they both kind of look. I mean, they look like completely different phones because they are, but nowadays most iPhones look almost the same, but this was a pretty big visual change. Now, in terms of the longevity between them, I've talked about this a lot this year. The 6s Plus actually lasted for quite a bit of time. You would not expect a phone like the 6s Plus to last as long as it did. It started getting support right after the iPhone 6 a year after. The iPhone 6 has been outdated for many years now. The 6s Plus has still been getting updates, which is so cool. Although it's still getting updates, it's probably ending off with iOS 15. So because of that, it doesn't really make like a whole lot of sense to buy this phone anymore because it's already outdated by the time you get it. The 7 Plus, on the other hand, although it's still a pretty old phone, it's approaching 6 years old this year, it still doesn't make too much sense to, if you're going to buy an iPhone, I'd recommend buying a 7 Plus over the 6s Plus, but this is the lowest iPhone I'd recommend buying. Any iPhone you buy on top of this would be so much better. Even the iPhone 8 Plus is a really big upgrade coming from the 7 Plus, but there really isn't any point of buying a 6s Plus anymore, to be honest. You're much better off buying something like a 7 Plus nowadays, so in terms of that covers it up there. Now let's go and do a speed comparison between both these iPhones. The 6s Plus has that Apple A9 chip inside of it with 2GB of RAM, the first iPhone to bring 2GB of RAM, where the iPhone 7 Plus actually has that Apple A10 Fusion chip inside of it with 3GB of RAM. So let's go and see which one is the faster phone between both of these. Okay, there we go. I pretty much cleared out all the apps in the background, as you guys can tell. Now the 6s Plus is on the left, the 7 Plus is on the right, so let's get into it. Let's do phone calls, 3, 2, 1. Pretty much almost the same thing. The 7 Plus was probably faster there. Music, 3, 2, 1. And the 7 Plus does seem to be a little bit faster here, although the 6s Plus did get into a different panel, so I'm not really too sure what that's about. Let's go and get into something like Apple TV, 3, 2, 1. And probably the 6s Plus was a little bit faster there. Honestly, wasn't expecting there to be that big of a difference, but the 6s Plus kind of caught up. Let's do photos, 3, 2, 1. 7 Plus I think is slightly faster there. Let's go into their app stores, 3, 2, 1. 7 Plus is the faster one there. The 6s Plus a little bit behind. Scrolling through, you can kind of see kind of the same thing. There really isn't that crazy big of a difference between these so far. Let's go and get into camera, 3, 2, 1. Pretty much the same thing, getting into their photos. Definitely faster on the 7 Plus, but it was actually a pretty glitchy experience on both, which was very interesting. Hopping out of this one, let's go and get into iTunes Store. 3, 2, 1. 7 Plus was faster, 6s Plus again slightly behind, getting back into the front page. Let's do reminders, 3, 2, 1. 7 Plus I think was the faster one there. Let's do clock, 3, 2, 1. And kind of the same thing too, hopping out of this one, let's go and get into mail, 3, 2, 1. And I do think the 7 Plus was faster there by quite a bit. Let's go and get into something like podcasts, which I think I've already done, and I must not have done. Let's go and get into settings, 3, 2, 1. Now it's very interesting that even an application like settings is so much faster on the 7 Plus. Scrolling through, not really that big of a difference there. Let's go and open up Safari and let's load up a page within Safari. So we can go and click here. And let's go and go to something like bing.com, 3, 2, 1. 7 Plus again was a faster one here. Now let's go into apple.com, 3, 2, 1. The 7 Plus was a lot faster. It could be because this website was already loaded and it was already cached in the background. So that could be it too. So let's go and load up the Apple Watch page, for example. See what's going on here. For some reason, didn't click on the 7 Plus. So now that we have a lot of these applications open, I can probably tell you that the 7 Plus is the faster one, but it's actually very interesting because both of them are very much the same. Like they're both very similar. I wouldn't necessarily go from one iPhone to the other just based off the speed, although I do think the 7 Plus is the better one for sure. There really wasn't that big of a difference in speed, but you can tell when I was scrolling through these apps, the 6S Plus was glitching quite a bit. So I'll definitely tell you the 7 Plus is the faster one here. It's definitely the smoother one too. So that pretty much covers it up there. Now let's go and hit on the cameras. Now on the back, you can see dual camera setup on the 7 Plus, wide-angle lens and telephoto lens. The 6S Plus has a single wide-angle lens. Both can do 4K at 30 on the back. Both can do 1080p on the front, I believe. So that's a really good thing. There's no like 1080p at 60 or 4K at 60 on the back of these, but they do have 1080p at 60 on the back, which is good. Now with the 6S Plus, as I mentioned, a phone like this still has a lot of capability for the most part, nothing crazy. Really what it's lacking are the multiple sensors. You only have one lens on this thing, which is kind of a sad thing. With, you have video mode, you have slow mode, there's no portrait mode on it, there's no cinematic mode, there's nothing like that. So there are some downsides of this camera. It's definitely not great. I would say it's good enough for the most part when you consider the age and everything, but the 7 Plus is a much better phone just because of that camera setup. You're getting that telephoto lens, which is really cool. You have the ability of zooming in a lot. You don't have the ability of zooming out a lot, but it's definitely a far better camera setup than the iPhone 6S Plus. And like I mentioned, the main reason for this is because you do have that, better camera setup. You have an extra lens. You have, I guess, higher quality lenses on these things too, which is great. But I do like having that telephoto lens. It really just makes things that much better. And that is one of my favorite things about the 7 Plus. So definitely with the camera side of things, the 7 Plus is definitely the way to go. It's by far a better camera in my opinion. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, the 7 Plus is probably the better phone. I do think the 7 Plus is a better phone in pretty much every single area. There really isn't a spot where I would look at the 6S Plus and be like, oh, this is the much better phone. Like, you need to go and buy this phone. I really don't see that here. I think the 7 Plus is by far the better option. The 6S Plus, if you have it, I would probably recommend keeping it until the iPhone 13 prices go a little bit cheaper in the used market, and then you should probably go and pick one up there. But I do think with something like the 7 Plus, it's a very solid option. You can't really go wrong with something like the 7 Plus in my opinion. It's an old phone now, but it's not outdated yet. It's still getting iOS 16 as far as we know. So that's a pretty big advantage of this device. I think with something like the 6S Plus, it's a really good option too, and I would recommend buying this phone more. But the 6S Plus is really cool, and I don't think you can go wrong with this iPhone either. So in terms of that pretty much covers it up. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that would mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.